Hi all, I'm Jonathan Mammerl with another episode with the HR Engage podcast. And here today we have Tanya Hibbard. Tanya, how you going?
I'm really well. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Tanya, I'm really excited about this episode because you've got a really cool history, great journey into HR. Looking forward to hearing about it. Now, I'd like to read out all these bullet points of your history and all about yourself, but you're in front of us right now. So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Okay. So my career in HR started in automotive, and I've worked in HR now for 21 years. So I started off as a HR coordinator. I had my tertiary quals and it was a dual position. I was supporting the director of a company as well as the HR manager. And the HR manager decided that she wanted to go and have a family, and she whispered to me, "Oh, I'm pregnant, don't tell anybody." And I thought, beauty, I'm going to take your job. She went and had maternity leave, and I got the position. And from there on in, I was with automotive for about 8 to 10 years and looked after operations across many dealerships, as well as had the opportunity to develop or redevelop 4 sites across the East Coast. So it was in Sydney, Gold Coast, and Brisbane as well. And then after working in automotive, I moved across to mining support services and heavy industry. And that saw me looking after teams throughout the Bowen Basin, New South Wales, Hunter Valley, PNG, and they were always mobile service support teams to different mine sites. So working in mining, in the last couple of years, I've just gone across to oil and gas. And the really exciting thing and new project that I'm leading at the moment is to implement our first Aboriginal workforce. So I'm working with the community, in Elliot, which is 6.5 hours drive south of Darwin, if you look at the map. And I'm just chuffed to be part of that project and see our Aboriginal workforce starting their new positions on site.
It's so interesting hearing. I mean, just that, and I know for you, that's like the back of your hand, like how you got into your career. But it's such an interesting journey. You've gone from automotive and dealing with, yeah, of course, yes, multiple sites, but quite a visible HR perspective, and then sort of heavy industry and mining, which as we all know, quite IR based. There's a lot of documentation, a lot of safety. Like there's, it's quite a heavy area. And now you're into this like oil and gas again. I suppose there are some similarities, but you've got some really interesting projects you're working on. It seems that from your perspective, just from you, and I'm very interested to hear this. Has this been? Have you thought about this in terms of, yes, I want to get started in automotive, and now I want to get into heavy industry essentially, and then move to oil and gas. Did you specifically think about that when you were looking at your HR journey?
Well, automotive, I was very young, so it seemed very glamorous. And I thought, great. And I love cars. So
Okay, there it is. Okay, there we go. Yep.
bit of a rev head. So for me, it was like, great, how exciting working with brand partners like Holden and seeing the latest Holdens come out. And I got to have lunch with Peter Brock. Like, how many
Oh,
people can say that? So, it's a bit of a car nut, and that was exciting. However, I think I was more attracted to mining, and I must say, though, automotive taught me the commercial aspects of HR, because automotive is all about the dollar. We all know that. It is cutthroat sales, and it is, you better know your bottom line at the end of every meeting, or you better go in and hit those targets, or it's
is that
sharp.
because the margins are so low, or is it just because it's so KPI driven, or is it a bit of both? Like, what's the
The margins are
reason on that?
so low.
Yeah.
So low. And it is not, a lot of customers go in there and think, oh, he's ripping me off, that car salesman. I bet he's, they're not. We often say that a dealership is just like going into the 7-Eleven. Like, you're going there for your petrol, but they want you to buy all those chocolates and sweets that are sitting at the front counter, and the ice cream. And, that's what how a dealership
Right.
makes money. And also its service. So I guess I'm very passionate about the service side of automotive, because that is where the most profit is to be made. So I can share a bit about that later if you get that right and how you can really make that sing. So going into heavy industry and mining, I think I'm a farm girl. I grew up on a farm and I watched my father work very hard on a farm. So I have a huge respect for blue collar workers. And I've always called myself a pracademic, not an academic. Yes, I've got my education because you need that to have a career, but
Yeah.
I learned far more through experience and listening to other people and seeing their wins and falls along the way. So I really enjoyed and felt really comfortable working in these all male environments, coal mines. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but I think like male workforces are much more simpler to work with. It's
Okay.
because they call a spade, and
Yep.
it's easier to work with. And I also have great respect for the mining industry and all the things that it provides and all the jobs that it provides as well. So that's my opinion on mining, but I think that's why I got so hooked on heavy industry and just helping people that may be like me that aren't, professional university attendees. Some of us just like to go to work and get things done and be proud of that. And I find great joy in supporting people like that to get the job done.
That's really interesting to hear, because the areas or industries you've picked or you've chosen or has called you in, you might say, Tanya, have been areas where traditionally with human resources they can be quite challenging. You're looking at mining, you're looking at oil and gas, heavy industry. That traditionally, and going back even further, traditionally would have been very health and safety orientated or very heavy, and still is. Sorry, and still is. I don't mean to downplay it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. He's talked about that whole idea of you really learnt whilst you've been in these roles. And I know there's been quite a few past podcast interviewees that we've had on the show here who have said you do need that balance. Your thoughts on that? Because you've got that really heavy industry mining experience, so right at the cutting edge of HR. What are your thoughts on that?
The balance between the commercial outcomes and also the supportive side of
Yeah,
things.
I suppose more that you have maybe the academic side, and then you've got the,
Mm,
I suppose, the practical experience side of things.
mm,
What are your thoughts? And I think you sort of went to it, I suppose, in a bit, that you sort of said, look, I really learnt, like the experience was actually what gave me my
yes.
wings, not necessarily the academic side.
Yes. Yes, I can refer back and think to myself, oh, that's what they were talking about when we learnt that. But I
But that's hindsight. In hindsight, you're able to go, okay, that's what they were talking about. But
mm,
was that only
mm,
because you got that experience when, okay, that all makes now logical sense?
yeah, I think interacting with the workforce taught me more than I could read up about or learn about, because at the end of the day, you are working with humans. Humans are going to change daily. They're going to perform differently. There's other outside factors that are happening as well, other stresses. So it just takes time over the years of having different conversations with different people and learning how to get the best out of people, learning how to respect people as well. I mean, when I first went in, I would see things and think, really, you're an adult and you behave that way or you talk like that to other people? But then as you progress in your career, you become more and more helicopter, I think, and you
Yeah.
started looking upon it and going, I can see this coming. I know where this is going to head, or when we implement this change, I bet that group of people are really going to get fired up over that, and those ones will fit in straight away. So it's experience like that, life experience, I think, that you need to have. And with that brings confidence. So when you're going for your commercial goals and you're sitting at the table with the executive team or even preparing something for a board, I feel confident because I know, because I've been on the ground with the people and I know what these figures are telling me and I know what this means out in the real world. So that provides me with the confidence to be more commercial. I think that's how I mix the two in, if that makes sense. I
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
yeah.
I suppose, and you really touched on that point, or actually, you maybe more than touched on it, but you've really emphasize that point about the commerciality of your role. Is that something that's really important to you in terms of your human
Very,
resources journey, or even just the way you think about human resources?
very. I think I attach that to my own self-worth in the workplace, and where that was instilled in me was in the automotive industry, where I had a particular leader. When I first went in, they said, HR, what's HR stand for? Never heard of it. And then another owner of a dealership that we took over said, HR sounds like a luxury item to me. Can't imagine how you bring in any money. So to me, those thoughts have always stuck in my head, that I better prove myself that I'm going to make money for this business, because I can't go out the front and sell cars, and I can't fix cars. So I've got to do something well. And to me, that was a project of reducing turnover for them, and actually showing some people, yes, we've had X amount of people come in and walk out the door. But as soon as you put the dollar signs up in front of the car industry executives, that's a whole different story. It's like, oh, Tanya, we're on board with that. Well, yeah, let's work on our turnover. So so it's always taking like a problem, and then attaching the commercial value to fixing the problem, and then delivering the solution to them. And maybe I picked up a bit of car sales along the way. Who knows? But it's worked for me. But I definitely take a lot of pride in, and whether it's asked of me or not, I'm always going to bring that information to any meeting I go to and say, this is what the commercial risk or benefit is going to be to us. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point you brought up. And does that also feed into your passion, or why you enjoy human resources? I mean, I suppose that's what I'd like to know is why are you passionate, and why do you enjoy human resources?
I have always been the person that enjoys behind the scenes and making somebody else shine. That I find great joy in that. So whoever that is, if it's an executive that's struggling with their leadership skills with their own team, I'm happy to give them coaching and advice, but I don't expect anything back. The joy that I will find is when I hear from one of their team members, oh, such and such has been great lately, he's changed a lot. And I just sort of think, oh, that's really good. So, and sorting out problems for people, it may not always be about development. It may be helping someone to see something a different way, or somebody perhaps from one of the examples, maybe had workers in an ammonium nitrate plant, and they don't know how to articulate, I want to be valued more, or I would like a pay rise. So helping everyone, but not necessarily needing to be that person myself. So that's where I find great joy. And then
That's
the
pretty
company
amazing.
as a whole, even if there's a financial outcome where the company says, oh, we've doubled profit in 2 months, then I think that's to do with me as well. Maybe I'm delusional. I don't know.
You do like to take the credit, but in the background, like taking the credit, like, yeah.
Yeah. Why not? It is. People are everything. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're almost, I mean, using a silly analogy, but you're almost like the Nick Fury of the Avengers, right? You like to be, you're just sort of in the background doing your thing, but you let everyone else shine. But you got that pleasant smile on your face. You're like, yeah, I help with that. I help with that.
Yes. And I often get the compliment that, and again, I may be delusional when I think it's a compliment, but they say, you're not like normal HR. And I think, great. To me, that's a compliment, because I want to help you. I don't want to police you. And, of course, sometimes IR issues come in, and I have to be that person. I'm very comfortable and very proud to say that in a male-dominated industry, I have a really clear line of being very approachable and easy to get along with and accessible. But at the end of the day, I'm not your best friend who's going to cover for you either. So, yeah. And aren't we all? That's HR. Yeah.
Do you find that, and I'll ask that question, do you find that line sometimes difficult to straddle in terms of, having that line in HR? Because you do have, like, obviously you've got the compliance side, of course, and, there's different parts to it, especially in your role. There's also got projects, and you've got things that are probably outside of a normal HR space, definitely, that you're you're dealing with, especially in your mining, heavy industry, oil and gas. There's definitely areas that are outside of that, but you need to know bits and pieces of it to understand the commerciality of it. But then you have the other side, I suppose, which is like the, I suppose, well-being side, the employee side, the trauma side. Do you find that difficult to balance?
No, I'm very lucky that I can just turn it on and off. And I don't know if that comes from years of experience. I'm sure if I could remember back when I was younger, I'm sure it was far more difficult
Mm-hmm.
because you want to be accepted and be everyone's friend in a business. Then the pendulum might swing the other way where you think you are the police of the business.
Yeah.
So eventually you find a nice spot which is where I am very comfortable and have been for years, where I can bring those skills to the table as needed. And a very nurturing side of me would be my return to work practices. I love and find great joy in bringing people back into the workplace who've had injuries. And during my study, I had the opportunity to work with people who had acquired brain injuries and find them work and get them back on track. So I
Mm-hmm.
think naturally I have the ability to care for others and want what's best for them, and then trained skills to make sure we're compliant and safe. They interconnect anyway. If we're being compliant, I'm looking after the humans. It's not just a piece of paper. There's policy and procedure, and compliance is there to protect you and get you home to your family.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. Yeah.
We have a lot of people listening on this podcast on Spotify and Apple, and also watching on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. But there's a lot of early career HR professionals that are listening to this or watching this. If I could get you to time travel a little bit and meet the early career you, Tanya, what advice would you have for the early career Tanya?
Hmm. I think something that really helped me when I was younger to build up my confidence
Mm-hmm.
was get yourself into public speaking schools or clubs, get your presentation skills up. Now, where it's needed, I'm not talking about going in front of the board and doing a PowerPoint preso. Get your confidence in speaking face to face to another person who's totally different to you, because you may come out as a grad and be in your 20s and you're going to be part of a termination conversation with someone in their 50s. And if you don't have the ability to communicate face to face with respect and eye to eye, and we cannot email or text someone that message, so you've got to have the confidence to deliver that message. So I think that would be one tip, because I did fail at that for my first few years. If I had to go into an uncomfortable conversation, I was shaking, sweating. I thought, who am I to be having this conversation with this person? Yeah. So you've got to get strong at that. The other thing I could have done better and then learn how to do better was mapping out who my stakeholders were. If I was implementing change, I used to be a bull at a gate and get so excited and probably get 6 out of the 9 stakeholders and go, look what I've got, we're doing this. And then the other 3 would come up and be like, what have you done? My tip would be, if you are implementing change, you better know exactly who you're affecting right through to it. And it's usually finance that you'll miss. So they've never been a fan of mine. So yeah, so slow down. It's great to be excited and want to do wonderful things for the business. Always, just go back and check. That was just me personally.
Yeah, brilliant. And on the other side of that, we also have a lot of people listening to this or watching this who are probably more senior level or more established in the HR field. Do you have like maybe 2 big pieces of advice for them, for any person in human resources?
One that I can think of is, many times I've gone into a meeting thinking that the CEO knows far more than me. He's the CEO. He got this job because he knows everything. And then they turn around and say, I trust you. You're the expert. Tell me what I need to know. So I think don't ever forget that. Don't think that HR is this additional support service that looks after our workforce and celebrates special days during the year, you're a really integral part of that team, and they really need you, and they don't know a lot of what you might know. So, well, they don't know what they don't know. So it's your job to go in and tell them that. So I think anybody that is sitting at those tables, yes, be confident in the fact that what you're bringing is actually valuable and can change the commercial outcome for the business.
Okay, that's a really good tip. I think,
Oh, thanks.
yeah, I think not a lot of people think about that. In terms of the people who are the leaders or making the prime decisions or even the final decision. And maybe HR, people in HR do have that spot as well, but a lot of the time they may not. And I like that idea that you said, the first part, which was about the stakeholders. I think that's a good one. knowing all the stakeholders, no matter who they are, who's going to be affected, and mapping that out. It's a great one.
Yeah.
I think that could work for pretty much anyone in HR. Actually, to be honest, anyone in any type of change is great.
Yeah.
But I think that idea that they may not actually know. Sorry, the people who are in those decision making positions may not know everything, and to be honest, they're not really necessarily expected to, but they say, "I'll put some trust in you," and I suppose that feeds into what you're saying about speaking and communicating, which is if you can communicate that in a way that they're comfortable to trust you, trust your judgment, ask the right questions of you still, but trust your judgment. I think that's really key piece of advice.
Know your information and be able to deliver it in a realistic manner. I think personally don't enjoy it if somebody's showing off with, the big wonderful presentation. Just tell me the truth. I had a director once who actually, this is a learning experience when I was younger, and he'd say, all right, come down, sit down, give me an update. And I would blah, blah, blah. And just the most of what was happening in the workforce and turnovers doing this and whatever. He goes, for God's sake, if we went out for a wine, what would you say about my business? Or when you're having a wine with your girlfriends, how do you describe my business? And I thought, I couldn't tell you that, but that's what I want to hear. That's the stuff I need to hear to improve my business. So I guess the saying is sort of keep it real, yeah. I mean, we can present ourselves professionally, but the message should be authentic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, an authentic message.
Yeah.
Now, if I was to maybe change tact a little bit, because those are really, I think, really positive and really good piece of advice. But let's get back to the challenges. Like, what are the big challenges you're facing now in human resources, and how are you tackling it?
There are many challenges that I tackle. That's my job.
I'm pretty sure a lot of the listeners and a lot of viewers right now are nodding their head going, yep, same.
Yeah. But I do see an interesting challenge that I'd like to bring up, and it's not in the day-to-day business of HR. Yeah. It's looking at HR professionals as a whole, and that would be gender diversity within our profession. I think, I work in predominantly male environment, but I don't get to meet many HR professionals. And you had a guest on recently, Mark Lindley.
Yes, Mark Lindley. Yeah.
Yes, who I think a lot like, and really impressed me with his view of HR, and it gets me thinking, okay, if 84% of HR professionals are female and we want to have a diverse team ourselves because we know that diverse teams get better outcomes, and we want to remain unbiased in our judgments. So it started to make me think, are we not describing HR as a profession that is great for males as well? It's a strategic role. You have to have good business sense with it. Are we sort of coming across as it's a female role because it's all about nurturing and things like that? So I think perhaps more men might pursue a career if they knew that they had a place at the table to create change in a company. Does that seem like a reasonable challenge?
I think it's a big challenge. Human resources is, and I think not many people really realize this, and I'll probably realize this more. I probably knew it, but probably realize this more as I've been talking to so many people, especially on this podcast in HR. And that is that HR has, one, it's a relatively new area. And what I mean by that is, I know HR has been around for a long time, but in terms of its actual recognition, it's probably only very, very recent that we've had actual proper recognition for human resources. And then there's of course the qualification, formal qualifications, and now we've got RE, and there's a bit more going on now, but that's probably only relatively new. I think the second, so the development of the learning development streams are probably still, they're still going through that process. I think the other part, which I think is probably the other part of HR, which is there are so many facets to HR. There's so many, so you could be a generalist, but you could be pulled in, say, 10, 12, 14 ways. There's recruitment, there's retention, there's well-being, it's health and safety. You've got payroll under yours as well, under your portfolio. You've got payroll as well. Depends on the industry, depends on the size of the company, depends on the actual role. The role, sometimes those roles have a seat at the table. Some of the roles are nowhere close to the seat at the table. Some of them sit under finance. Some of them don't sit under finance. Like, there's very differing ways it's set up. If you think about other areas, maybe say, legal is a good one, or even finance, it's a bit more streamlined where they will sit in an organization, in terms of a service. But HR seems to be one where
that is true.
Differing views, right?
Yeah.
And that potentially,
and it's shared across different positions as well.
Correct.
Yes.
I think it's one area where it's shared across pretty much every department. So maybe legal has it, and maybe finance a tinge, but nowhere near as much as HR because of its realm of people. Like anyone but staff. Most companies who have lots of divisions will have also lots of staff, or lots of departments will have lots of staff. So I think that's part, that diversity part, and you sort of touched on that. Do you think there is a potential solution, or do you think it's just a challenge that we need to?
I think it's a challenge. I wouldn't know how to solve that. I think, and like you said, it is quite a new profession. So I think about that when I started 21 years ago, and people said, "What's HR?" I've never heard of it. So,
and that would have been unusual in other industries either, right? Definitely in automotive, but in other industries that would not have been unusual to say that too, right?
Hence, the other issues in HR, I think they're always going to be there. Like, legislation is always going to create change and dictate what we do. I think a challenge for me that I see is technology, and I know other HR professionals talk about technology as in the AI space and things like that. For me, I see it, living and working in country towns and things, I see a big social impact on our community. And if our workplace is our community, which it is, it's a big part of people's self-esteem is going to work and seeing their mates and having a good day. And it saddens me that the technology is promoting us to isolate and pushing us into working alone in silence. Everyone's got their headphones in, everyone's typing away. And one of the things I've noticed across the years, from a natural behavior at the end of the week to get together and debrief, and I'm not talking about going for beers or anything like that, but just sit around and say, oh, how'd you end up with that, and what do you got on for the weekend? It doesn't happen anymore. If I have been known to send out an invite and say, hey, let's all you don't have to drink, just come and sit with us. And I've had responses, I can't, I'm socially anxious, I can't do that.
Wow.
And that makes me sad, because what is your engagement and what is your buy-in to the workforce if it's not something emotional like that, where I'm going to sit with my mates and have a laugh? I think, and I worry people of my age, we've made best friends.
Don't do the maths. If you're at home, do not do the maths. I've done it already. Don't do the maths.
We've made friends along the way. I've got lifelong friends that I met at work. And I worry that they're going to miss out on that opportunity of not connecting with, you're not going to love everyone, but, come and have a chat. Yeah.
Talking about challenges, and maybe you have already said this, but I'll ask it anyway, because I ask every person that goes onto this HR Engage podcast, what is the one thing about human resources that people might disagree with you about?
Maybe it's the topic that I just brought up about having more male representation there, because I have been told, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a great thing to balance things out. But I have been in situations where I'm recruiting for my team, and it has been made very clear to me that that new applicant she will be in that new job, not he.
Wow.
So she will have these skills.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's real. So I think not
Is that
everyone will
is that a
agree with me.
predisposition? Do you think that that's just a predisposition, or is
Yes,
it just an
I do.
education process? Like, what do you think
I
that is?
think I think because females, let's say we have our traits are nurturing and kindness and support, that it's often been said to me, you can't have a male in that role because no one will go to him with a problem.
Right.
How do you
Right.
know? How do you know that? Yeah, the world's changing. All sorts of things are changing, aren't they?
Yeah.
So come on, I think it's a bit old school to think that it's a female only role. Yeah.
That's really interesting that you have heard that before and that's been said to you before.
Many
That's really
times.
interesting because it is so one, I think you've said it's a challenge, but also maybe people disagree with you. I have no idea that they disagree with you
Yeah.
about that concept. But I think what you're trying to say really is the balance. Like if you have more balance either way, it doesn't really
Yes.
matter which way it goes. But you're saying if you generally have balance in HR and how that's configured, you'll get a much more balanced view,
Yes.
balanced
Rounded
outcome.
out. And
Yeah,
practice what we preach. We're saying it to the other teams. Hell, make sure you get a diverse team so you all
yeah,
across the board practice what you preach then. So, yeah.
that's an interesting point. I want to change gears a little bit. So we have a tradition on the HR Engage podcast. We ask
Okay.
these rapid fire questions, and they're just questions just about you. And what I'll do is I'll ask a question, and the first thing that comes to your mind, you just let me know what that is. Okay?
This could be a worry.
No, no. All right. well, okay. Let's try. Let's give it a go and see how we go from there. Okay. So, what's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie. I don't have a favorite movie, but I
Yep.
love comedies and I
Yep.
love Will Ferrell. And in I'm going to say Step Brothers, the movie
Yep.
Step Brothers, because I was laughing out loud. And in my modern family that I have, we have two sons. Now, my husband, Scott, came with a Jack, and I had a Jack. So we've got two Jacks. So that's really unusual, if we go places and they, oh, what's your kids' names? Jack and Jack. So I'm going to go with Step Brothers because I think it's funny. Yeah.
That's fantastic. No, that's really good. Really good. And what is your favorite holiday destination?
Oh, the best holiday for me, I went to a town called Elaunda in Greece, in Crete. So it's off the beaten track. Certainly not like Mykonos or those kind of
Yep.
touristy places. This is like deep history. And I grew up on a tomato farm. So I am almost a tomato connoisseur. And I was blown away that the tomatoes in Greece the flavour was amazing from the volcanic soils. That was one tick.
Wow.
Swimming in crystal clear water, fishing. But the other amazing experience I had there is visiting an ancient city and me liking tradies and heavy industry. I was blown away at the plumbing system that they had back then, hundreds of years ago. The fact that they had a pit in the ground full of snakes that would predict the weather for them.
Yeah.
Engineering of that kind, I just loved everything about it. And yeah, I would go back in a heartbeat.
Wow. Okay. Actually sounds really lovely.
It is the most beautiful place.
Apart from family and friends, who has inspired you the most?
Hmm. Is it possible that you can find inspiration and learning not by having a mentor or inspiration as such, but watching many people and taking
Mm.
lessons from them doing things the right way
Yep.
and them doing things the wrong way? And I don't think it's a negative thing to see what people are doing wrong. And then I would think to myself, I will never be like that, or I will
Yep.
never repeat what that person's done, or I never want to work that way with
Yep.
my people. So I guess I haven't had one particular mentor. I've just sort of grabbed all the good stuff as I go along from the good people and be very mindful of the things that I have seen that I don't agree with.
I mean, that's good because I think a lot of people, maybe they get molded too much by one or two influences, and that's both good and bad. I think because then you
Yeah.
become potentially a bit too narrow-minded. I like your idea that actually I've just picked not just the good parts, but also I've gone, oh, I've seen that behavior or seen how they've done that and gone, I don't want to do that. Or and I've had this situation before where I go, oh, that's why they did it that way, and that's why I shouldn't have done it that way. That makes it all. It all now makes sense. Like I did exactly
Yeah.
what I said I wasn't going to do, and I did it. And exactly why I shouldn't do it is exactly here. Here it is, right here, right now.
Yeah. So again, pracademic, watch other people and learn. Yeah. Let them
That's
make the
a good
mistakes and then avoid them yourself.
one. I think it's also a life tip. That one.
Yeah.
That's a,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's the thing that you do outside of work that you're passionate about or keeps you going?
My husband and I are very passionate about farming. We love cattle. We run a farm down that borders the Lamington National Park, and we're currently looking for something bigger as well because obviously I've watched too much Yellowstone, so I feel like I need to have a whole valley now, and that is eventually where we'll retire to. But anything to do with farming and, yeah, growing cattle.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. And that comes from your background as well, right? You grew up on was a tomato farm. You said like you're a tomato connoisseur.
Yes, yes. I love anything outdoors, and maybe that's why I'm attracted to mining and heavy industry as well, because
Yeah,
I get to go and walk on the site as well. I need to be physically outdoors, and yeah, I love the peace and quiet of the country and the community spirit. I guess I'm probably just a bit of an old soul, I think. Yeah.
that's good. Tell us something about yourself that people don't know about you.
Okay. In my people usually shock when I tell them. In my 20s, I did quite a few years of Wing Chun Kung Fu.
Wow.
Yes, but it gets better. From there, I progressed into boxing. So I have had a couple of titles at the PCYC where I've won. And yeah, I used to love boxing. And I actually used to, while I was working on my HR career, I owned a Fernwood Women's Health Club as well. So that's something
Oh,
people don't know about me. And
wow.
renovated that business on the side. And yeah, so always around physical activity, keeping busy and making money, I guess.
Do you still do Wing Chun or do you still do boxing?
No,
No.
no. Now I do go to the gym just for my mental health. I think is
Yep.
really important, and I like to lift weights and things. But I certainly don't want to get into a boxing ring. I don't even think I'd last a 2-minute round sparring anymore.
Well, I mean that is actually that's I mean it's surprising fact about you. So that's a pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. I've got some few closing questions and then we'll wrap it up today. But if you could recommend a book, movie, TV show, or podcast to listeners, what would it be and why?
Or book I'm reading at the moment that I'm thoroughly enjoying is the Sapiens book.
Ah, yes.
Yes, it is so good. It is. Oh, I'm trying to think of the author before you've put me on the
I can't
spot.
remember either.
Yuval.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so I think that is such a fascinating book about human nature and our wiring and why we do things. And apparently, like the next two books after that will talk about the impacts of social media on evolution of our bodies and the impact that's going to have. So I think that's really interesting. And yes, we've evolved, but it all goes back to your little caveman instincts and things like that, the way people react when they're under pressure. So maybe that's a useful book for people going into HR. Yes, that's my book.
That's a good
What
one.
was the
That's a really
other
good one.
question? Podcast, HR Engage.
Oh yes, you heard it here first. You heard it here first from
Yeah,
Tanya. This is the
yes.
one. This is the one to listen to. Nah, excellent. I mean, like I've heard Sapien a few times from quite a few people. I think that's one where I think it's highly interesting. I understand it's a highly interesting book on that sort of
Very.
evolution side of things. And yeah, very. And from a HR perspective, I think very interesting book to read. I've heard that quite a few people actually.
Oh, good. Yep.
Okay, so is there a quote or moment of inspiration you'd like to leave us with?
I do have a quote that I refer back to if I'm getting on my high horse and things are getting a bit pressured and I feeling a bit judgy about the world that I work within, I have a quote that a man will always see the world with what he carries in his heart. So if you need to reflect back is what I do. If I'm getting angry about something, I take a look back and go, why are you so angry about this? Is it really to do with him, or is this something going on here? It's usually something going on with me. So I think, and I also think that's a nice way to see the world. People are genuinely good people. Not many people wake up and go, how can I ruin someone's day today? I think people wake up and just, yeah, want to be treated well.
Tanya, today's podcast has been really interesting because you're you're a tomato connoisseur, right? And former Wing Chun and PCYC boxing title holder. But
Yes.
on a serious note, you've come from this automotive HR background, moved into sort of heavy industry mining, in oil and gas right now. Very at the front facing, very physical as well. Very like you've got to be physically walking on site and all these types of things in HR. So it's an area where you cannot hide it. And I love your philosophy that it's not about hiding. You are going to be having to be on the front foot, and but you do that by bringing that commerciality, and that you seem to indicate that was from your automotive days of being able to show some commercial value, commercial worth to what you
Yes.
do with HR. But I really love the point that you said, which I think really, really goes towards a lot of things, but around that change management point, which was you better know who all your stakeholders are if you're looking to introduce anything or make any change or any project. Because if you don't, and you said you missed out on there's been a few times where you have missed out, it just
Yes.
becomes a problem. It just becomes a problem. It's a challenge that you
Yes.
just have to overcome and potentially no way back from that. I think that's a very interesting point that we can pick up from this as well. I think that your journey has really influenced the way you see human resources and even now in your position. But also, I think you've also said, well, that this experience is so much more important than, say, formal education or formal structures. Not to say that's not important either, because you've also
That's
said that
true.
on reflection, it actually does make sense. But it's that experience first that actually got you going. And I thought that was a really
Yes.
interesting point as well. It's been
Thank
really
you.
real pleasure having
Oh,
you
thank
on the
you.
HR Engage podcast. So HR Engage podcast, we've got Tanya Hibbard here. Thank you so much, Tanya, for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
So I'm Jonathan Mamrell on the HR Engage podcast. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, do all those things. Make sure you support the show. I'm Jonathan. Speak soon.